Welcome, wisdom seekers. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Red Thread podcast. I'm Vanessa, I'm your host, and I'm here with a very special guest. He is a medical herbalist, ethno-botanist, amateur linguist, pagan, and all-round magical being, my wonderful friend, Nicholas Edwards. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
It's a real treat for me. I'm really excited to talk to you. And we're going to talk about seasonal herbs, aren't we? And how nature's bounty can help boost our health. And I'm really excited to learn more about this topic. So
yeah. Well, hopefully I'll be able to say something useful.
We were having a chat yesterday, weren't we? And actually you came up with lots of really, really useful and interesting information. So I'm really looking forward to, hopefully we'll be able to capture all of that today in our chat. But first of all, as the listeners will know, I love to get to know my guests a bit better and give the listeners the opportunity to get to know them as well. So why don't we start by just talking about how we met and became friends and what you were doing at that time in your life?
Yes, well, that was, I don't care to say how long ago that was now.
Thank you.
It was quite some time ago. It was at Lincoln. I was at Lincoln University. I was actually doing a degree in herbal medicine back then. And back in the noughties, there was sort of a flurry of interest into complementary and alternative medical approaches. And there were quite a few degree programs at that time. So I was doing it in Lincoln. Interestingly, it's the only degree course that still runs in the UK. It's actually hosted by Lincoln College now. They moved over to the college, but it's accredited by the Open University. So you can still do a degree in herbal medicine. And that's what I was doing when, yes, I was lucky enough to meet you through a mutual friend. Yeah, so that's where the journey started, or that's where the professional journey started, I suppose.
You've always had, so we hit it off straight away, and our faith path actually was what brought us together. So you know, we were both kind of treading that pagan path at the time, weren't we? In different ways. But you've always had a love of plants, haven't you? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the countryside in Herefordshire. So there was lots of time just spent outside, lots of time enjoying the great outdoors, interacting physically with plants. My dad was quite a keen gardener. There was vegetable patches, rose bushes in the garden. Of course, at that time, it was just a chore. It wasn't sort of a deeply spiritual connection with the earth. It was, oh, you have to go and rake the leaves, and oh, the rose bush needs pruning and that kind of thing. But I think there's something to be said for that exposure to the living earth. So that obviously made an impact. And my mum was a nurse. My sister also started training to be a nurse. So I think there was sort of a familial, inclination towards looking after people, healing. So yeah, that combination of things, I think, pushed me in the direction of herbal medicine.
Wow. And the journey to get to where you are now. Talk about tell us what you're doing now. And I'm particularly interested to hear about the recent masters that you've done, and I think please share some of that.
Well, so after the herbal medicine thing, I sort of took a slight detour because I was very young, straight out of school. So I sort of went off and did a few other things, traveled around. And then when the pandemic hit, I'd lived abroad. I was back in the UK by then. And the pandemic hit, and the world sort of turned upside down. I actually lost my job at the time, and I kind of thought, well, what can I do with this time? How can I turn this into a gift? And so I decided to pursue a master's course, which I had my eye on for a very long time. And it's because I don't know if anyone watched the show Grow Your Own Drugs that came out it was on the BBC about possibly about 8 to 10 years ago now. And it was hosted by James Wong. And it was all about simple herbal remedies that you could sort of make at home. And he had done this course at the University of Kent called ethno-botany, which was it's essentially a branch of anthropology, but it focuses specifically on the connection between humans and plants. And of course, humans and plants interact in many ways on different levels, for commerce, for shelter, for food, agriculture, medicine, primarily. Well, not primarily, but the medicinal uses of plants are obviously a big part of it as well. And so ever since I watched that program, I sort of had my eye on this master's course. And then when I found myself with some extra time, I thought, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it now. Doesn't matter that I have to do it online, entirely at a laptop, entirely through the medium of Microsoft Teams. I did it, and it was fantastic. It was just wonderful, so interesting. There was, I had a class in sort of social anthropology. I had a class in botany. There was the research methods thing as well. It was so wonderful. And for the dissertation project, we sort of were free to choose anything really, as long as it sort of vaguely fell into the topic of ethno-botany, into looking at some kind of interaction between humans and plants. So I decided to go back to the herbal medicine side of things and investigate how herbalists use plants to help people with insomnia. So I spent about 8 to 10 weeks interviewing herbalists in the southeast of England, 3 of which I was actually working with. I was working in their shop as well at the same time. They've got beautiful little shops down in Kent. So if any listeners are in Kent and they want to check out a lovely herbalist shop, I can give some recommendations. So I sort of looked at the plants that are being used. I looked at how herbalists identify insomnia, how they characterize it. I sort of identified this range of plants, and sort of the theoretical underpinning of how it all works. And then that sort of led me back into the full professional world of herbal medicine, and I decided to do some not retraining, but like a refresher course, and now fully back into it. And it feels wonderful. It feels like coming home.
Oh, that's a really interesting story, and I wonder if you're perhaps not alone in reclaiming some of your passion and your power in the pandemic, and returning to the thing that you love, because it really did make us revisit, I think, and readdress our values and what's important to us and what we want to be doing with our time and our lives. And how wonderful that you've been able to return back to that love of plants and the calling to be a healer. I mean, you may not call yourself that, but I very much see and sense that inner healer within you. And you're, of course, now practicing. You have your herbal medicine practice.
Yes, I do. Yes, I rejoined that. We have a national institute of medical herbalists, sort of like a voluntary governing body. So I rejoined them. Yes, I am practicing now, available for consultations online and face to face. I'm currently based in Bristol. So, the Bristol, South Gloucestershire area, that's where I'm sort of doing physical face to face consultations. But thanks to the wonderful power of the internet, I can connect with people all over the place, which is amazing.
And that is one of the benefits actually of these last 2 years, isn't it, that the world has become a lot smaller in that sense and opened up, so that we can practice our craft virtually and help so many more people, connect with so many more people. And of course that's why I'm here with the podcast doing, so hopefully connecting people in with other souls that will help them on their journey. And maybe there are some people listening who want to connect with you, Nicholas, and of course you'll find all of the links in the show notes. So if you do want to connect with Nicholas, then his website and his fabulous Instagram account, I do recommend that you go and follow that, are available. So do hook in. Great. So yeah, that was our little story to where we are now. And we're here in the UK. We've just passed through the spring equinox, and we're now heading towards Beltane on the 1st of May. And it really is that time of year. We've had the most wonderful weather the last 2 days.
Oh yeah.
It's been warm and lovely. And the buds are there, and they're starting to open up, and everything's got this kind of green mantle. It feels alive. The birds are singing, and everything feels like it's coming alive again. So I'd love to know, given that nature gives us the medicine we need in the season that we need it, what should we be looking out for in terms of plants at this time of year, and how can they help us to nurture our health?
Well, so there's a few plants that especially good at this time of year, and sort of provide us with nutrients and phytochemicals that can be really beneficial for us. The main ones this time of year are nettle, of course, fantastic nettle, which has come back into people's consciousness, I think, as a beneficial plant, and as a vegetable source of nutrition. I remember when I was little, nettle was just an evil thing that stung you.
Yes.
There's no good to it, but it's actually so nutritious, really packed full of vitamins, vitamin A, I think, in particular. So they're great. They can be used as a vegetable, so they can be included into soups and stews. That's normally how I get my nettles in. And then there's plants like chickweed. Chickweed is a lovely little,
Yes.
quite a low growing plant, stellaria.
Yeah.
It's got these little white flowers, teeny little things. They look a bit like stars. That's quite a cooling remedy. That's included a lot into very cooling creams, great for the inflammatory conditions, eczema in particular. But it can be also consumed as a vegetable, much like nettle. It's kind of got a grassy flavor, but yeah, it's also very nutritious. Same for cleavers or goose-grass, the annoying plant that leaves the little barbed seeds on your dog's coat
Yes.
as it's running through the
Yeah,
countryside.
the sticky birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That much like chickweed, that's very nutritious plant. It can be eaten as a vegetable. It's also it has a very cooling effect on the body. It's known as a lymphatic remedy. It's thought to act on the lymphatic system, which is all about clearing and cleansing. So it has an affinity with the skin as well, because in herbal medicine, we sort of see the skin. We understand its role as sort of an organ of excretion, and if it gets a bit overloaded sometimes, then it can, yeah, all sorts of skin complaints can happen. And so chickweed and stellaria are sort of these remedies that help the skin clear itself with all these. I don't want to say toxins, because toxins is used quite a lot, but it helps the skin clear itself out.
Yes, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all of these remedies, they're all about helping the body to do the job it normally does on its own, but help it a little bit better. And sometimes, you know, things get a bit overloaded because our environment or our diets. And so these remedies are sort of helping the body function at their optimum.
Oh, well, that's really useful advice. And I'd love to know, because I'm not a forager, actually. I do a little bit, but it's never really kind of come into my practice. And I know a lot of witches are really into their herbs, and they'll go out into the hedgerows and stuff. But I would love to get some tips on foraging, really. Where to go, what to look for, and what not to do. So what advice have you got to share on that?
Well, I mean, there are some really great books that you can get on foraging, and I would say if you're really keen on it, or you really want to get into it, there's a lot to bear in mind. So getting a nice book would be a good start. A few places like the Wildlife Trust, they have a nice guide on foraging.
Okay.
It's good to get started.
Yeah.
The thing with foraging, I mean, a lot of it is common sense, you know, not picking from plants that are, you know, near a roadside, or you know, right on a path, or anywhere where animals frequent, you know, nothing sort of against the stump of a tree,
Yeah.
and whatnot. Things like that. Also, it's important to forage only a little bit from whatever's available. You know, you need to make sure that you leave plenty for that local ecosystem and the animals and plants around that rely on that food source. So if there's like a bunch of nettles in a particular place, just, you know, take a small portion of that. Also, just to take a few leaves and berries off a plant, not to over harvest a single plant, you know, not to strip it all, you know, of its leaves, because or flowers, because it needs these organs itself for survival. And don't dig up plants. It's actually illegal to uproot plants in the wild.
Yes, yeah, that is true.
And I mean, but then more generally to that, wherever you're foraging, make sure that you're allowed to do it in that area. It's, you know, there's lots of private property around, and I'm sure the owners probably wouldn't appreciate people wandering in and foraging. So you have to be really careful. Find out from, you know, the local area where you're doing it. Make sure it's allowed. But and also, don't take any chances if you're not sure what the plant is, or if you think it looks like something you do know but a little bit different. Don't take any chances, because it could easily be a poisonous relative if something, you know, is benign. This is especially true for mushrooms. I don't pick mushrooms at all in the wild. I mean, I know you can, and I know that there's lots of really great fungi species, but because I'm not very familiar with them, I just don't go there. So.
Yeah, well, I'm the same, and I think back to when to my childhood, and maybe yours is the same. And we used to go on walks, and my dad would pick field mushrooms, and we'd fry them up for breakfast. And yeah, that I wouldn't go near any of that now. Yeah, I don't trust my knowledge, but yeah, that is good advice, actually, to do your homework, I think, and to really to know what you're picking. And I learned recently, because a lot of people have said to me about nettles
Yeah.
being great over the years, and I've always been a bit scared to pick them. And I learned recently that actually, because of the sting, and I learned recently that the sting is only on the stem and not on the leaves. So you can actually pick the leaves with your bare hands, as long as you don't touch the stem. You won't get stung. Now, I have tested this, and it is true, at least for the examples that I've chosen anyway. But maybe I chose non-stinging variety of nettles. Who can tell?
I think sometimes they get a few of the stings on the underside of a leaf. So you can, if that's the case, I remember being taught the trick of folding the leaf over and then picking it off the plant like
Okay,
that.
so you're only touching the top surface
Yeah,
of the. For anyone
yeah.
listening, we're doing the hand movements, folding a leaf over. Yeah.
I hope this is clear to your
Yes,
watchers.
yes,
How you pick a nettle leaf.
definitely is. Yeah, yeah. Don't need to diagram. That's the action. But yes, yeah, and I enjoyed picking nettles for a while after I learned that, because I was quite I was quite pleased I wasn't getting stung anymore.
Another thing with picking nettles and plants like cleavers, you want to get the younger growth of the plant when it's still quite green and quite bendy. You don't want
Yeah.
older nettles, they get that sort of dark purple color. They look a bit dusty. You don't want that. You want the fresh tops, and
Yes.
they've got the most nutrition in, and they taste less bitter. As plants get older, they get a bit more bitter and a bit more woody as their tissues become more woodier. It's less easy to digest.
Yeah, yeah. And this is interesting because we were talking about this yesterday, because I'd somebody had told me that they were eating hawthorn buds off the tree, just like picking them like they would do with blackberries, and I tried some the other day and they're actually really nice. I mean, you must be sure that it is a hawthorn, and I'm lucky that I've lived where I live for a while, and I know the hawthorn trees near me, and they are a tree favoured by my goddess Rhiannon, so I know them very well in my area. But yeah, never eaten. I've heard that you can make a tincture from all of the phases of the growth of hawthorn, but I'd never heard that you could kind of eat the buds, and I ate them, and they're really, really delicious.
Yes, yeah. I must admit I've not tried hawthorn bud before, but I've tried a few other flowering tops and buds, like garlic tops. Because garlic flowers, I think gardeners don't like it when garlic plants go into flower, because the plant puts all of the energy into making the flower and doesn't put it into the bulb, which is obviously what gardeners want.
Yes, it's what we eat in our feed.
Yeah. So you prune back the garlic flowers before they flower, and they're lovely. You can pop them into salads. They've got like just a mild flavor, which is really nice. I've had pesto made with those before, and that really tastes good. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. You're right in the hawthorn plant. It's at different times of year it produces different tissues that are harvested and turned into remedies. So we use the flowers, the flowering tops, the berries when it comes into fruit. And there's actually a whole subset of herbal medicine called gemotherapy, which is making remedies specifically from these budding tissues that are packed full of all these chemicals that the plant manufacture in order to coordinate its growth. And so the idea is, by taking these tissues from a layer of the plant called the meristem, you've got all of these cells that they're full of potential and can differentiate into any other kind of tissue. And so by harvesting that, you get a remedy that sort of conveys that potential and provides us with these fantastic phytochemicals that in an adult plant would be much lower concentration.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that is well, that's really interesting, given the time of year that we're talking here now in the UK, in the Northern Hemisphere. It's that springtime when everything is starting to bud. So you've got the sap rising in all of the plants, and that's the symbolic of kind of everything coming back to life, and the potency and the fertility, I guess, of nature, and the fecundity and the abundance that we're experiencing. And that's something we can kind of harness in ourselves, and I guess nurture with plants, to enhance our own returning energy. As the light returns to the world, we've got our own energy rising, and we want to get out there and do our thing, don't we? So yeah, so brilliant. Well, it's been fascinating to learn about these different plants that are just out there in my hedgerow that I can go and use to support my health at this time of year. Nicholas, I always ask my guests, what will you be doing specifically to nurture your health at this time of year?
Well, I will be trying to do sort of a cleanse, you could say, not a full detox, but this time of year is quite a good time to just give our bodies a bit of a rest, and sort of boost our natural ability to process and excrete toxins. So some of the things that are nice for that are getting in these plant, vegetable medicines like Nettle. I'm going to be getting a bit of aloe vera juice in, because it's a very cooling remedy, and it fits my constitution of being a bit fiery and a bit hotter. I'm not going to commit myself to it just in case it's too much, but getting up a bit earlier in the morning, even at the rising sun, that's supposed to be a good way to kickstart your metabolism, and sort of align your body to what's going on in the natural world. So I'll be doing a few things, but I think it's important not to get too ambitious and say you're going to do all of these things and then not manage it all, and then get a bit disheartened and then end up like fodding it off and not doing anything.
There's a lot of wisdom in that very sentence. Yeah, don't pile too much on yourself. There's enough to be doing already. Yeah, and getting up with the sun is going to be a lot easier, because we're going to be going into British summertime soon. Yeah. Which is that quirk of the UK clock system, where it's from the farming tradition, I think, where we put the clocks back. No, they go forward in spring, don't they?
Bring forward, yeah.
So that means sunrise will be a bit more accessible, not quite so early, I think. So I just wanted to pick up on, you've mentioned a few cooling remedies, and this season, in the Avalonian wheel of the year, this is the season of fire. And it's interesting that you've talked about cooling remedies being good at this time of year. And is that in general, or is that more for kind of people who are of more of a fiery disposition?
Well, it's all about balance, isn't it? And we unlike homeopathy, which is sort of like treats like, herbal medicine is a bit allopathic, in that it sort of, if there's an imbalance of one thing, you sort of treat it with its opposite number to bring back balance. That's one way of doing it. And so some people are like myself, their constitution sort of naturally disposes us towards more fiery states, or we maybe react more strongly, and so fiery states is sort of basically in more medical terms, it's talking about inflammation, and inflammatory processes, and blood, And so for me, so I come into that categorization of fiery or choleric, or in the Ayurveda it would be I can't remember. They have like this three dosha system, and so I sort of sit into this fire one. So for me, cooling remedies are good to counteract that that inclination. But that's not to say everyone is. Some people are naturally tend towards the other way, in which case cooling remedies are generally not needed. The opposite, sort of gently warming things like cinnamon, turmeric, ginger. These are the things that suit them better. But yeah, it's interesting that at this time of year, the things that are available, or the things that at least in the UK, that we see a lot of are more cooling remedies. I don't know if there's anything to that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I learned recently that traditional Chinese medicine, this time of year is associated with their element of wood, which we often, I think, sometimes think of as quite a static. It could be quite a static element, really, but in TCM, it's more about the growth and the power. And the heat that is generated by the growth of wood. So yeah, that would all kind of fit in, and then kind of working to balance that if it becomes too much with some of the cooling plants that are around as well. And the other thing I learned with TCM is traditional Chinese medicine is that the liver is associated with this time of year, this season as well, and that fits in with your cleanse, your advice on cleansing.
Yes, because the liver is so amazing, and that's where it all happens. The liver is what helps us to deal with all of these chemicals coming into us, via our food and environment.
Yeah.
And I use the word chemical in a general sense, not like artificial chemicals necessarily, but food metabolites and all the things that we need for our body. It's always working. But yeah, this time of year you can give your liver a little bit of a boost, just to help it reach peak efficiency. Dandelion is one of the main Western herbal remedies for this, and that is a long association with the liver, and helping the liver function a bit better and reduce bile, which is sort of another method of excretion for the body, and also sort of helps the rest of the digestive system work better.
Brilliant. So there's some really, really good advice there, useful tips, and I'm just as always astonished at your wisdom and the knowledge that you have, and you're clearly very passionate about this subject. So I've been lucky enough to be a patient, and I would definitely recommend anyone that feels that they resonate with your way of working and your healing practice to connect with you, and learn more and get more. And I think I mentioned at the beginning, Nicholas has hopefully agreed that he will have a regular spot here to give us some tips and treats about the plants of the season to help nurture our health. So I very, very much look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. And if anyone wants to read up about plants, there is a blog on my website, theapothecarybox.co.uk. It's in its infancy, so there's not much there yet, but there'll be a regular little tidbit of information. The blog's called The A to Z of Herbal Medicine, so I'll be working through the alphabet and adding little bits
Oh, well,
And
that
then,
sounds like a brilliant way. If you want to learn more about the herbs, perhaps that you've heard today, then in due course, I'm sure they'll be up on your website. Thank you. So we always finish with a prayer, and today I would like to offer you my gratitude for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And your insights and all of the information that you've given us about herbs for health in the season, and also offer my blessings and blessings on behalf of the goddess to you, Nicholas, and to all of our listeners that have joined us on the episode today. Thank you very much for listening, and until the next time, we'll see you soon. Lots of love.
see you soon.